Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something critical in medicine, a silent process, that shapes so much of what you'll see in practice. And for you, our listeners, especially those in your first year of medical school, we're diving deep into atherosclerosis, our goal, to make this core topic really stick. We'll use clear explanations, some memorable hooks, maybe even a few questions to get those neurons working.
That's exactly right. Atherosclerosis, it's fundamental. Understanding it now, invaluable for your whole career. We'll clarify the terms, visualize what it looks like, macro and micro pinpoint where it hits hardest, and explore its effects. Plus, we'll dissect how it actually develops, the cells, the lipids involved, look at who gets it, and crucially, how we can fight back.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We hear phrases like hardening of the arteries all the time, but precision counts in medicine, right?
Right.
So what exactly is atherosclerosis, and how is it different from, say, arteriosclerosis?
Yeah, that distinction is really key. So think of arteriosclerosis as the big umbrella term. It just means thickening and hardening of artery walls, period. Yeah. Any cause. It's like general road wear and tear on any street. Makes them less elastic, contributes to that age-related hypertension, even affects how the body deals with shock.
Okay, the general wear and tear.
Exactly. Now, atherosclerosis, that's specific. It is a type of arteriosclerosis, but it's the thickening and hardening of those large and medium arteries specifically because of atheroma formation. And that narrows the pipe, the lumen.
Atheroma. That word itself, it sounds, well, descriptive.
Yeah.
Does the origin help paint a picture?
It really does. It comes from Greek, meaning porridge.
Porridge.
Okay, yeah, so think of this specific hazard building up inside the artery walls, like a greasy, lumpy porridge. It's basically accumulated fat, intracellular, and extracellular lipid in the intima, sometimes the media, of these bigger arteries.
So this porridge builds up, often silently. What does it actually look like right at the very beginning, say in someone quite young? We'll circle back to that when we talk about fatty streaks.
Good question. And remember where this happens primarily. Large and medium arteries. Think coronary arteries feeding the heart, renal to the kidneys, cerebral in the brain, mesenteric to the gut, popliteal behind the knee, the major circulatory highways.
Right, the big routes. So the main issue, the lesion, is the plaque. And you're saying it doesn't just appear overnight, it grows in stages.
Exactly. It's more like a destructive building project.
Yeah.
Starts small, gets more complex. We can track it chronologically in 3 main stages.
Mm-hmm.
A good way to remember them is the acronym FSC, fatty streak, simple plaque, and complicated plaque.
FSC. Okay.
So first, the fatty streak. This is the earliest signs. Little yellow, slightly raised lipid deposits in the intima. And here's something that surprises people. You can see these even in children. Some early studies, like on U.S. soldiers in Vietnam, found them pretty commonly in young adults.
Wow, even in kids.
Yeah. Now, at this stage, there's usually no real blockage, no disturbance to blood flow. And answering your earlier question, while we see these streaks early, whether they always lead directly to the dangerous plaques later on, that's actually still debated.
Ah, okay, so it's not a definite progression.
Not necessarily automatic, no.
Oh.
It's like seeing a tiny crack in the pavement. Could become a pothole, but maybe not.
Oh.
Other factors play a big role in that progression.
Right. So after the fatty streak, what's the S in FSC?
Simple plaque. Now, these are more distinct. Raised yellowy-white lesions, maybe a centimeter across, irregular shape. You find them widely distributed, often near ostia, those openings where smaller arteries branch off.
Ostia, right, the junctions.
Exactly. And these simple plaques, they start to grow, merge together, and begin encroaching on the lumen, the space inside the vessel. This is where you start to get turbulent blood flow.
Turbulent flow. That makes me think. Are there places in the body where flow is naturally more turbulent anyway, making them hot spots for these plaques? Just a thought. Maybe we can revisit that later.
That's a very insightful question. We'll definitely come back to that. So after the simple plaque, we get to the complicated plaque. And this is where things get, well, dangerous. The ticking time bomb stage.
Okay, this sounds serious.
It is. You see, calcification hardening. Ulceration, the surface breaks down. Thrombosis, blood clots forming right on the plaque. And even hemorrhage into the plaque itself. These things weaken the artery wall, especially in big vessels like the aorta, which can lead to an aneurysm, a dangerous bulge.
Aneurysm, right.
And if the plaque surface ruptures or ulcerates, it exposes really thrombogenic stuff underneath, triggering clots immediately. Or it can shed debris, like little bits of cholesterol, downstream microemboli.
So it can cause blockages further down the line, too.
Absolutely. It's a major source of problems.
Fascinating and scary how it progresses. Now, if we zoomed right in microscopically, what's happening at the cellular level during all this?
Microscopically, it's a whole cascade. Early on, you see smooth muscle cells multiplying, migrating, and crucially, the formation of foam cells.
Foam cells.
Yeah, these are basically macrophages and some smooth muscle cells, too, that have just gorged themselves on lipids, specifically oxidized lipids that have accumulated. There's also extracellular lipid hanging around, and some T lymphocytes show up to the party.
So inflammation is kicking off early.
Definitely. Then later, the changes become more destructive. You get fibrosis, scarring, necrosis, actual tissue death within the plaque. Cholesterol clefts, these are like empty spaces left behind where cholesterol crystals were. Calcification, like we mentioned. The internal elastic lamina, a layer of the artery wall, gets disrupted. Damage spreads into the media layer. New, often leaky blood vessels grow into the plaque neovascularization. And critically, you see plaque fissuring and rupture, the events that often trigger heart attacks or strokes.
This really brings us to the impact. This plaque isn't just forming randomly. You mentioned it has favorite spots. Where does it hit hardest? And what are the major consequences across the body?
Exactly. It has preferred locations. The aorta, especially the abdominal part below the diaphragm, coronary arteries, carotid arteries feeding the brain, cerebral arteries within the brain, and arteries in the legs. To remember the big patterns of disease and effects, think HABP, heart, aorta, brain, and peripheral arteries.
HABP. Okay, let's start with H, heart.
Right, heart. Atherosclerosis in the coronary arteries causes ischemic heart disease, IHD. Basically, the heart muscle is starved of oxygen due to reduced blood flow. This can cause angina chest pain, often on exertion, when a narrowed artery can't meet increased demand, or a full myocardial infarction, a heart attack. That's usually from an acute blockage, often a clot forming over a ruptured plaque. Usually needs 70–80% narrowing before that critical event.
And heart attacks have different types, right?
Yes. Acute forms like STEMI and NSTEMI, depending on the ECG changes, but it can also lead to chronic problems like congestive heart failure or even sudden cardiac death due to arrhythmias.
Okay, devastating effects on the heart. What about aorta?
Aorta, particularly the part below the diaphragm. The big risk here is aneurysm and rupture. An aneurysm is just a localized bulge or dilatation of the artery because the wall's weakened. In large arteries like the aorta, atherosclerosis is almost always the cause.
How big can these get?
Oh, massive. Up to 10, even 15 centimeters in diameter. They're often filled with thrombus, clot material. And the major danger is rupture, which is usually catastrophic. They can also fling off emboli.
Why do they rupture more easily as they get bigger?
It's physics, basically. The law of the place. It says wall tension is related to both pressure and the radius. So as the aneurysm radius expands, the tension on the wall increases, even if the blood pressure stays the same. Makes it weaker, more prone to bursting, like blowing up a balloon too much.
Makes sense. Okay, on to B, brain.
Brain. This involves the cerebral arteries themselves, or often the carotid arteries in the neck. The result is ischemic stroke. A common mechanism is atherosclerosis in the carotid artery. A plaque forms, maybe a clot develops on it, and then bits break off and travel up to block smaller arteries in the brain. That's thromboembolism.
Leading to?
Things like transient ischemic attacks, or TIAs, mini strokes, or a full-blown cerebral infarction, a stroke with lasting damage. And over time, multiple small infarcts can cause multi-infarct dementia. And circling back to your question about turbulent flow.
Yes. Where are those hot spots?
Arterial branch points are prime locations, like the carotid bifurcation where the main carotid artery splits, or around those oschia we mentioned where smaller arteries take off from a bigger one. Flow gets disturbed there, more shear stress, makes it easier for plaques to start.
Okay, so junctions and branches are vulnerable. Makes sense. Finally, P in HABP.
Peripheral arteries, we mainly mean the legs here. This leads to ischemia and potentially distal gangrene. Symptoms start with intermittent claudication pain in the calves or thighs when walking. That gets better with rest. As it worsens, you can get pain even at rest, ischemic rest pain, and eventually tissue death, gangrene.
Are certain people more at risk for this peripheral disease?
Yes, it's strongly associated with the diabetes and smoking. There's also a specific condition called Leriche syndrome, atherosclerosis, blocking the aorta right where it splits to feed the legs. It causes a triad. Weak pulses in the legs, claudication in the thighs and buttocks, and erectile dysfunction. And don't forget, atherosclerosis can also hit the mesenteric arteries supplying the gut, leading to things like bowel ischemia, malabsorption, even intestinal infarction.
It really affects the whole body. This all sounds incredibly grim, but you hear atherosclerosis called a silent disease for a long time. If it's progressing quietly for years, what's the big signal, the alarm bell that says, okay, this isn't silent anymore, it's an acute crisis? We'll touch on that soon. Okay, we've covered the what, where, and the devastating effects. Now, the really crucial part for understanding it is the how. How does this actually happen? The thinking used to be just, too much fat in the blood. But it's more complex now, right? The reaction to injury hypothesis.
Exactly. That hypothesis has really shaped our understanding. It views atherogenesis not as just passive fat deposition, but as an active inflammatory response. It involves macrophages, smooth muscle cells, lipids, even clot formation on the artery lining, the intima. It's dynamic and it feeds itself, auto-accelerating. To simplify the steps, let's use another acronym. I, DEM-SN. Injury, dysfunction and emigration, macrophage SMC foam cells, smooth muscle proliferation, and neovascularization.
IDEM-SN. Okay, walk us through it. Starts with injury.
Injury, yes. Chronic injury to the endothelium, the inner lining of the artery. What causes it? Lots of things. High levels of LDL cholesterol, those toxins from cigarette smoke, high blood pressure, and hemodynamic stress like that turbulent flow we just talked about at branch points.
So the lining gets damaged first, then D&E.
Dysfunction and emigration. The injured endothelium doesn't work properly. It becomes sticky. Platelets adhere, releasing growth factors like PDGF. Monocytes, a type of white blood cell, stick and squeeze through into the artery wall, becoming macrophages. T lymphocytes are also drawn in. And then smooth muscle cells from the deeper medial layer migrate into the intima.
So a lot of cells moving into that inner layer. Then M.
Macrophages and smooth muscle cells become foam cells. This is key. The macrophages start modifying the LDL that's also getting trapped there, oxidizing it. Then both macrophages and those migrated smooth muscle cells start gobbling up this oxidized LDL. They get so full of lipid droplets they look foamy under the microscope. Hence foam cells. You described them well earlier, like greedy janitors getting bloated and becoming part of the rubbish pile themselves.
Got it. The foam cells. Next is S.
Smooth muscle proliferation and matrix deposition. Triggered by growth factors and inflammatory signals from the macrophages and platelets, those smooth muscle cells in the intermediate start multiplying, and they produce extracellular matrix stuff like collagen. This buildup and forms the fibrous cap over the lipid core of the plaque,
giving the plaque structure. And finally, N.
Neovascularization. New, tiny, often fragile blood vessels grow into the developing plaque from the artery's own blood supply. These can actually be a source of hemorrhage within the plaque later on. It's a really complex interplay of cells. If you want another anchor, the key cellular players involved are LPSN, macrophages, endothelial cells, lymphocytes, platelets, smooth muscle cells, and maybe even some neutrophils contributing, all orchestrating this inflammatory and proliferative mess.
MLPSN with the cells. Okay. And a huge part of this reaction to injury, especially the foam cell part, is lipids. We hear so much about good and bad cholesterol. How does the body normally handle these fats, and how does it go wrong in atherosclerosis?
Right. Understanding lipid transport is fundamental. Fats don't dissolve in blood, so they need carriers. These are the lipoproteins. Think of them as transport vehicles. They have a fatty core, cholesterol, triglycerides, and an outer layer of phospholipids and special proteins called apolipoproteins, A to E, that act like address labels and docking proteins.
Delivery trucks for fat?
Pretty much. Chylomicrons are the first ones, carrying fat absorbed from your meal in the intestine to the liver. Then the liver packages fats, especially triglycerides and cholesterol, into VLDL, very low-density lipoproteins. These are the main delivery trucks taking fats from the liver out to tissues like muscle and fat cells. As VLDL drops off triglycerides, it gets smaller and relatively richer in cholesterol, eventually becoming LDL, low-density lipoprotein.
LDL, the bad one, usually.
Often called that, yes. Its main job is to deliver cholesterol from the liver to peripheral tissues, which need it. But it hangs around in the blood longer than VLDL. This longer shelf life makes it more likely to get modified, specifically oxidized, especially if levels are high. And it's this oxidized LDL that macrophages just love to eat, turning them into foam cells. That's the crucial link to plaque formation. Also, if the LDL receptors on liver cells aren't working properly, say due to a genetic issue, the liver can't clear LDL effectively, so levels in the blood go up.
Okay, so LDL delivers cholesterol out and can become problematic if oxidized or too high. What about the good cholesterol?
That's HDL, high-density lipoprotein. Think of HDL as the recycling truck or the cholesterol scavenger. Its job is reverse cholesterol transport. It goes out to the tissues, picks up excess cholesterol, including from those early phone cells, using proteins like ADCA1, and brings it back to the liver for disposal.
So it cleans up.
Exactly. That's why high HDL levels are generally protective. It actively removes cholesterol from vessel walls, reducing the chance of plaque buildup. Genetics plays a role here, too. Variations in proteins like apolipoprotein E, ApoB, can affect LDL levels and are linked to atherosclerosis risk.
That clarifies the lipid story a lot. So we've seen the plaque journey, the mechanisms, the role of lipids. This disease is clearly a major issue. Who is most at risk? And crucially, what can actually be done about it?
Yeah, the epidemiology highlights clear risk factors, some we can change, some we can't. A helpful acronym for the big modifiable and non-modifiable ones is SHJ plus L: smoking, hypertension, age, diabetes, and excess lipids.
SHJ plus L, let's break those down. Smoking.
Smoking, a huge one. It damages the endothelium, promotes clotting. It actually reduces natural substances that inhibit platelet clumping. Big positive, though. Risk drops quite dramatically when you quit.
Good to know. Hypertension.
Hypertension, high blood pressure. Strong link to heart disease, probably causing that initial endothelial injury through sheer force. Age. Non-modifiable, unfortunately. Atherosclerosis generally progresses slowly over decades. Gender matters too. Premenopausal women tend to be relatively protected compared to men of the same age, likely due to estrogen. But that advantage fades after menopause, and by age 70 or 80, the rates are pretty similar.
You mentioned women being protected before menopause. Is there anything that makes them lose that protection earlier?
Yes, absolutely. And that brings us to
Diabetes.
Diabetes mellitus, and even impaired glucose tolerance. This is a massive accelerator. Cardiovascular disease causes something like 80% of deaths in type 2 diabetics. They have at least triple the risk of dying from CVD. Diabetes is like hitting fast forward on artery aging. It's linked with abnormal lipids, hypertension, more oxidative stress, inflammation, and the formation of something called advanced glycation end products, or AGs.
EG.
Yeah, they form when sugars react with proteins. They cross-link collagen and vessel walls, making arteries stiff, trapping LDL, promoting cholesterol deposition, and crucially, diabetes negates that premenopausal protection in women.
Wow. Okay, an L in SJD plus L.
Excess lipids, hyperlipidaemia. Specifically, high total cholesterol and high LDL cholesterol are strongly linked. High HDL, remember, is protective. There are rare genetic conditions, like homozygous familial hypercholesterolemia, where LDL is sky-high from birth. These individuals can have heart attacks before they're 20. You might even see physical signs like cholesterol deposits in the cornea, corneal arcus, tendons xanthomas, or eyelids and xanthelasma.
So those are the big five in SJD plus L. Any others?
Oh, yes. Definitely. Diet plays a role. The typical Western diet, high in processed carbs and unhealthy fats, like trans fats. Abdominal obesity, being sedentary, insulin resistance itself. Excessive alcohol, more than maybe 5 drinks a day. Interestingly, very moderate amounts might be slightly protective, possibly by raising HDL, but heavy drinking is definitely harmful. Non-modifiable factors also include ethnicity, people of South Asian descent, have higher risk family history, and specific genetics beyond just lipid disorders. And a really key point, risk factors multiply. Having several doesn't just add up the risk, it increases it exponentially.
Multiplicative risk. That's critical.
Absolutely. Yeah. Coming back to that question about the alarm bell.
Yes. When does the silence break?
The alarm bells are precisely those acute events triggered by complicated plaques, a sudden heart attack, MI, a stroke, an aneurysm rupturing. That's when the underlying disease dramatically announces itself. That's the shift from silent progression to life-threatening crisis.
A sobering thought. So the picture is clear. Widespread disease, multiple risk factors, many controllable. What's the strategy? How do we prevent this or intervene?
Prevention is absolutely key. Because once significant plaques are there, you can't really reverse them entirely, but you can slow their progression dramatically and prevent complications. The core strategies are what you'd expect. Targeting those modifiable risks. Don't smoke, sensible alcohol use. Improve the diet, less unhealthy fat, less processed carbs. Get regular aerobic exercise, control your weight, aggressively treat hypertension. Maintain good blood sugar control if you have diabetes. And of course, use lipid-lowering medications like statins when lifestyle isn't enough or the risk is high. All these interventions aim to slow things down, stabilize plaques, and reduce the chance of those acute, dangerous events.
Wow, what a journey through atherosclerosis. We've really unpacked the terms, visualized the plaque growing, seen its devastating potential across the body, dug into the cellular how, and importantly, looked at the risks and what we can actually do. For everyone listening, especially our first year students, you've just got a solid foundation on arguably the biggest killer in the Western world.
That's right. Think of atherosclerosis as a lifelong process, a marathon. The seeds might be sown early, but lifestyle choices and medical interventions can really change the course of that race. Understanding the why behind it all helps us make a real difference for patients, starting with prevention. And always remember that silent disease, it doesn't always stay silent.
A powerful and important thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep digging, keep asking questions, keep learning. We'll be back soon with more insights to sharpen that medical mind.